All right, first of all, I want to welcome everyone to the Total Gut Restoration presentation. A little bit about my background so that you know who is talking to you. I got my bacteriology degree in Moscow, Idaho, my microbiology in Glasgow, Scotland. My first job was working in Pharmacia Diagnostics in Stockholm, Sweden as a microbiologist. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist. I'm a traditional naturopath. I transitioned to nutraceutical sales. My husband and I lived in Texas for over 30 years and then moved to Idaho to become organic farmers and ranchers. All these D's that you see in my bio here is for an extended bio, but there is a reason they're there, and I'll explain. While we were up in Idaho, we found out that in the agricultural world up here, they spray herbicides 3 times on the crops. And there's crops on 3 sides of us. And 8 out of 10 of our neighbors up here are suffering with cancer. We have already lost a couple. That made me to start looking into the soil microbiome, and that's how I found Microbiome Labs. I went to a public lecture down in the local town closest to us, and the physician there at the clinic publicly said, Roundup is so safe that you can coat your tongue with it. Of course, I spoke up and gave him several references while I disagreed with him. And just coincidentally, 9 days after that, the Forest Service aerially sprayed herbicide over the entire forest that borders our property. So I'm very passionately involved in the microbiome for more than just an occupation. So my creed is that if I do nothing and I say nothing, then I'm part of the problem. So I am available to help all of those who want to be part of the solution. Now, all these D's that I mentioned, defining moments in our life, coincidentally, begin with the letter D, but it's the same with our microbiome. All of the bad things that happen in our gut start with a D, such as dysbiosis, lack of diversity, destruction of the mucus layers, disruption of the microbiome, and dyspepsia. We're going to go over all of those. My hope is that you'll have a clear understanding of not only what causes gut issues and metabolic endotoxemia, but that you have a solution for it. Okay. So this is just a little picture of where I live. As you can see, it's my own private Idaho, but unfortunately, it's also a toxic soup. This is how they spray the herbicides, and we have corn, lentils, wheat, barley, garbanzo beans. Northern Idaho is the lentil and garbanzo capital of the world, not like Southern Idaho, which grows potatoes. Where I was talking about the Forest Service, where they aerial spray, you'll see they rope off the forest, and as if the wind doesn't blow over onto our property. Now, this is what we're going to be very familiar with, is how to maintain or how to achieve a healthy gut and how to avoid a leaky gut. So we'll go over these points several times, and so this is what I want you to see the correlation. For what in a healthy gut, you want to have this mucin 1 layer, which is a diversified group of bacteria, keystone strains that your mother gave you, and where the IgA, the secretory IgA, can arrest the lipopolysaccharide and keep it from harming the mucin 2 layer. So these are the 3 components: a healthy mucin 1 with diversity, plenty of keystone strains, and a functional protective mucin 2 layer that protects the underlying epithelial cells to keep the tight junctures tight so that the immune system below in the lumen is not having to attack any invaders. But unfortunately, this is what's happening not only in your patient population, but across the country. We have a disrupted microbiome, as in there's There's dysbiosis, so there's too many pathogenic organisms shedding their cell wall of this lipopolysaccharide, which is a potent endotoxin that is eating into the mucin 2 layer, degrading it, which then they now have access to the tight junctures, which they destroy. The lipopolysaccharide floods into the lumen of the cell, which causes a immunological cascade, which is systemic inflammation. This right here is the source of all chronic illness. This right here is the source of autoimmune disease, allergies, sensitivities. Every chronic underlying condition comes back to metabolic endotoxemia. So these, again, the Ds that I was talking about, dysbiosis, lack of keystone strains, and the keystone strains, you'll hear me say these organisms multiple times: Akkermansia musciphylla, Faecalibacterium prunitzii, Bifidolongum, Bifidoadellentia. I know some of these sound like Russian and Italian mobsters, but they are the good guys. So we want to get rid of the Ds, the dysbiosis, the lack of diversity, the disrupted mucosa, the disturbed immune response, and dysfunctional immune system. So I'm going to fly through some white papers just to really reinforce that all of this is documented, that the gut microbiota, when it has a lot of dysbiosis, is going to correlate with diabetes, irritable bowel disease, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, all of these chronic illnesses. This paper brings out a very important concept called intelligent modulation, and we're going to talk more about that because this is important. This is the gut-brain connection and why you're seeing so many mental and emotional issues that correlate with the dysbiosis of the gut. Again, the gut microbiota, low diversity correlates to inflammatory bowel disease. The keystone strains, these are the good guys. Akkermansia musciphylla, it's going to be correlated when it's in low numbers with these chronic illnesses. So you want to encourage the Akkermansia. And it's a fat-burning organism, so it helps with weight control. So we really want as many of these good guys as possible. The Faecalibacterium prunitzii, again, a good guy. The more of these guys you have, the less inflammation, the less inflammatory bowel disease you have. Here, intestinal barriers, the epithelial barriers correlate when they're disturbed with autoimmune disease. Remember I talked about the intelligent modulation? Here's a white paper discussing that when the mucosal dysfunction and that lipopolysaccharide is flooding into the lumen, you're going to also see correlations of depression, the pathophysiology of depression, anxiety. Gastrointestinal, or here the GERD and the digestive disorders correlating with this immune dysfunction. And we're going to talk about more of this because when people are using proton pump inhibitors, it's actually adding to the problem. Yes, it's a quick fix, but the underlying problem is this epithelial dysfunction, the metabolic endotoxemia. So there's other ways to deal with dyspepsia, and we just launched a new product, and we'll talk about that. It's MegaGuard. In this one here, a lot of people don't realize that AIDS is a severe case of metabolic endotoxemia because the virus specifically attacks the CD4 memory cells of our gut, where our immune system, the bulk of our immune system is. And that's how this disease can progress to AIDS. This paper is discussing how diversity is also correlated with aging and longevity. Okay, so back to this diagram. So we see now that all of these chronic illnesses, inflammatory bowel disease, autoimmune disease, anxiety, depression, diabetes, it all comes back to this problem right here, where you've got a potent endotoxin destroying the epithelial cell and potentiating the immune system below it. As you can see, this cascade of inflammation. So what's the answer? What can we do about putting the gut back together? Main thing, we have to neutralize this lipopolysaccharide. We have to cause a metabolic shift in order to bring back a good diversity and repair that mucin layer. So if we look at lipopolysaccharide in metabolic endotoxemia, it's an autotoxin. We have it as part of our normal microbiome, but it's about being in the wrong ratio. When you've got dysbiosis, you've got too many of something's out of ratio. So here's the thing I want you to remember about this endotoxin is that what makes it toxic, the portion is lipid A. And these organisms get their lipids from what we eat. So wouldn't it be nice if we had a chart on the type of fats that would make this toxin worse? Well, glad you asked, because we do. That chart is right here. So out of all of the fats that you eat, the one you do not want to eat if you have metabolic endotoxemia or a leaky gut is coconut oil. So this study was done to show that these oils are neutral, and these are actually going to help reduce the inflammation and the lipopolysaccharide. But while there's a leaky gut, you should advise your patients and your clients to avoid coconut oil until after their gut is healed, and then they can eat the coconut oil because there's great benefits in coconut oil. So this was an important discovery that sometimes what we're advising could actually make things worse. So this is just going through the inflammatory cascade. So it's very well elucidated how it causes this underlying inflammation. So we know about the gut disorders and that lipopolysaccharide is going to be involved with everything you associate with IBS, Crohn's, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, but it's also the underlying cause for heart disease, lipid problems, hypertension, diabetes, dementia, cancer, hormone issues like PCOS, and liver issues. And here's the documentation. You see here the obesity papers, insulin, and the liver disease. We're talking about autoimmune diseases, diabetes, and I want to go back to this one, Alzheimer's. Now, because there's so many underlying causes that are associated with lipopolysaccharide, this is the primary die-off reaction. So when you're working with someone and they have any intolerance, it always goes back to lipopolysaccharide. If we take constipation, for instance, this lipopolysaccharide can shut down the bowels. So there's two different things you can do in a protocol. You either slow it up so that the body can catch up to neutralize the lipopolysaccharide, or you can add the IgG2000, a concentrated immunoglobulin, to help neutralize it. But any of these other things can be happening as well. And that's why it's important to relate it back to the lipopolysaccharide and to deal with it in the protocol. And we saw, besides Parkinson's, now it's also recognized that Alzheimer's is connected with lipopolysaccharide. So you can see that a lot of people, if not everyone, is suffering with some level of metabolic endotoxemia. Okay, so now we're going to get into what we can do about the Ds. So the first thing, when we're looking at reconditioning the gut, the MegaSpore is going to deal with the dysbiosis, the GALT, which is the immune-associated lymphatic tissue in the gut, and that in the dysfunction of the immune system. And it helps with diversity, and it helps with the production of the short-chain fatty acids. And then the prebiotic is going to help with also the diversity of the keystone strains and the production of the short-chain fatty acids. And the MegaMucosa is going to help with the rebuilding of that mucin 2 layer, because when it's disturbed, that's how the tight junctures are destroyed. So it also helps with the dysregulation because of the IgG 2000, helps with pathogen destruction and neutralizing the lipopolysaccharide. Now, first we're going to look at the scientific studies and background we have that shows we know what it's doing. What keystone strains is the probiotic helping, and how much better is it helped with the prebiotic. So it's great to be using MegaSpore, but to get so much better results by feeding those keystone strains specifically. So these charts and bars show we know the specific organisms that are being increased. We know how much short-chain fatty acids are being increased, how much MegaSpore does, and then how much more the prebiotic is going to do. And so this has been well studied, and as of, get to the end here, as of today, move these pictures over, we were just notified that that study is published. So that prebiotic is, and this is through a company, ProDigest, in a study that they used to study the gastrointestinal tract, is called a SHIME study. It's in Ghent, Belgium, and this is only few companies will do an intensive study of this kind, and we are very fortunate. Our founders, Kieran Krishnan and Tom Bain, were part of this study, and this is really huge. So I'm just letting you know we've got studies to back up all of our products. The MegaMucosa has a very well-known ingredient, many of you are familiar with, the IgG 2000. And this product's been around a long time. It's got great studies behind it. It's the serum derived, bovine immunoglobulins. It has the full range of the immunoglobulins. It helps neutralize that lipopolysaccharide. Also in the MegaMucosa are the polyphenols that help shut down the oxidative stress of the immune cascade. You can see it also helps with weight control. What's very important in this formula are the 4 amino acids, because they specifically feed the colonic cells in the gut to make 95% more mucin 2. So this is where the building blocks of repair are in the amino acids. And now we're talking about MegaSpore. Our product has also been studied well and published in the World Journal of Gastrointestinal Pathophysiology. This was done at North Texas, at the University, North Texas in Denton, and the take home on this was it reduces 45% of the lipopolysaccharide in metabolic endotoxemia in 30 days. So this is really huge. And this is on students that did not change their diet. They didn't stop partying. They just lived their, regular student lifestyle, and it was still helping amazingly. What we did find out too, though, in the placebo group, those who were not treated by the spores, that endotoxemia continued to get worse. So this is really, in our 20s, is where this gut damage really starts and progresses. So the net difference that MegaSpore can make for all of your patients is, a 60% difference. And this is showing that not only lipopolysaccharide was looked at in this study, but each of these markers were checked, and those that came into significance in 30 days are now in their own individual clinical trial. These were studied as well, and they came into significance within 90 days, and so we have clinical trials on these as well. But this is huge to see a probiotic able to help and affect triglycerides, ghrelin for appetite control, inflammatory markers for autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis, as well as diabetes. So when all of these studies are published, we will have the most studied and published probiotic existing. And then, because we're trying to take care of the entire digestive tract, this is the latest product that's been launched to help with the stomach motility and to help as a digestive aid. It's got some very special let's say types of licorice. These are a certain type of bioflavonoids that help with H. pylori. It's been well studied for dyspepsia and bowel regularity. It also contains artichoke and ginger, and each one of the components have been studied in different countries and are actually pharmaceutical drugs in those countries. So we put those together in a very powerful formula and are already getting some great feedback. So everything that it should be doing, we've confirmed it is doing. So in summary, what I've tried to show is that the pathophysiology of the gut and the microbiome involved in disease, causation, and progression is paramount to treating conditions. And that diseases are quite varied, yet the gut-associated dysfunctions are all the same. This means that there can be some degree of uniformity in the baseline treatment of various conditions like autoimmune disease, cardiometabolic syndrome, depression, IBD, IBS, reflux, etc. So strategically addressing the dysfunctions in the microbiota, the mucosal immune response, and the barrier structures can prove to be a highly effective way of treatment of these chronic illnesses. The same treatment can be preventive for a number of conditions. So I hope that I have been able to show you this in the literature. And so if I'm going to take you off of mute so that if we have any questions that we can address those.
Questions?
Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, I think we have time. So tell me, is there a stepwise fashion with products? Like, are you supposed to do MegaSpore with the prebiotic, or how are these commonly taken or recommended?
Super. We've got this great little handout now. It's called the TGI booklet, and there is a protocol. Was saying whoops on there. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So the standard protocol is to titrate MegaSpore. And we start with MegaSpore because it's the best indicator that someone may have gut damage or dysfunction or dysbiosis. So if anyone has any intolerance, then while they're titrating, they can titrate slower or they can add IgG 2000. So we start with MegaSpore, 1 capsule every other day for a week, then 1 capsule every day for a week, and then you're taking 2 by the 3rd week, which is the recommended dose. And you want to take these during food while you're eating. We recommend take them at your largest meal because digestion is the most challenging for the body, and these are synergistic to us. They will produce more enzymes and more antioxidants and more short chain fatty acids if they're challenged. So that's why you want to take them when you're eating. And then after you've got that up to the full dose, then you want to add either the prebiotic or the MegaMucosa. And it doesn't matter really which of the two powders you add. If they had difficulty titrating up on the MegaSpore, I usually add the MegaMucosa first, just because they're going to get that additional IgG 2000, and you titrate that as well, a half a scoop for the first week, and then you're up to a full scoop on the second week, and then you start the second powder, which would be the MegaPreBiotic. Same thing, half a scoop for the first week, and then a full scoop for the next week. So, you know, typically you want to keep them on this protocol with all three products for about 3 months. Most of their gut issues and symptoms that you're tracking should be resolved. If not, you could extend it for the most severe cases. But if everything is resolving, then you can let the powders run out and then just maintain with MegaSpore 2 to 3 times a week. And that's really by whatever is convenient for your client. Some people just take it on the weekends. Some people would take it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's just really for them to decide. The MegaGuard, which is for dyspepsia, that can be started right at the beginning, even before MegaSpore, just because this is an acute. If they're having, dyspepsia or GERD, they would want to take care of that right away, even though the long-term fix is going to be through the total gut restoration. But certainly they can start that first. Did that answer your question?
That totally answered it. That was awesome.
Super. And this booklet I've put it in the signature of all my emails, so you have quick access to it.
That's great.
I've also created this Microbiome University, so it's also in my signature, so that you can get access to any of the presentations I've done, all of the slides, all of the studies, and it's in a question and answer format, so that if you want to use it just kind of to challenge yourself as well. And this Thursday, I'll be doing a presentation on SIBO. So you're all welcome to join me for that.
Cool. That's wonderful. Thank you. That's very helpful.
My goal is to have the most educated practitioners in Texas.
That's awesome. That's really helpful.
Good.
No, my only question was to get that little booklet, but I guess I just need to get an email from you and then I'll have it.
Super. Well, email me and I'll put you on my list. I send out constant contacts every week for the new topic, and my email is tcarmack@microbiomelabs.com, and I'll make sure you're on the list.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for all the information.
We're going to send the next.
You are very welcome. Okay, super. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording on this, and we'll just log back in for the second go around. Is that okay?
Yeah, that works. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
A lot of notes.